Well, hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. A very, very warm welcome to DMH Associates webinar number 29. I'm Deirdre Hughes and I am your host today. We are going to be joined by some brilliant guest contributors, which I'll introduce in a few moments. And also, I'll be really keen to hear from you. Where in the world are you? And is the sun shining? Or is the moon in the sky? Perhaps if it's the evening, wherever you are, just say hello to us in the chat facility, and we'll get to know each other as we go along and spend the next hour together. Just to say, if you need captions, please turn your captions on. That facility is in the bar where you'll see either at the top or the bottom of your screen, there's three little dots, and you should see a sign there that'll enable you to turn captions on as well. So let me begin, really. As I said, I'm Deirdre, and we are here today to celebrate 5 years of DMH Associates, providing a whole series of webinars contributing to free professional development for people all over the world. And in fact, I'll show you in a few minutes' time where we've got people registered from all over the world. We started this series during lockdown, and I hope that through maybe the work that I have done with lots of contributors over the last 5 years, you'll feel that that has actually helped you. And if you're new to what we're doing, very, very warm welcome. I hope that you'll have some great takeaways from today. I just want to introduce myself really because for many people registered, you may already know me, or perhaps it's the first time that you've come to this webinar. You may spot I'm from Northern Ireland, although I've lived in England for over 40 years. But here's a lovely image of where I grew up in Northern Ireland. This is a place called Downhill in the north of Ireland. If you're a fan of Game of Thrones, and again, maybe in the chat, how many fans do we have of Game of Thrones? This is really the Dark Hedges, which is not too far from where I grew up as a child. I've recently had 3 books published, and today is not about my books. Indeed, today is to introduce a really, really hot off the press, cutting edge book. But if you're interested in my work, I'll say a little bit more about that at the end. So here we are. Let's have a look in the chat. Let's just see. Emma's from Northern Ireland, a kindred spirit, and it's raining. I'm sorry to hear that. Again, Taz is from Scotland. We've got Lena from Finland. We have got Catherine from Wellington in New Zealand at 3 a.m. in the morning. Can I just say you really, really deserve a prize, Catherine, for joining us at that very, very middle of the night, I would say. So thank you. Rainy Isle of Man, High Wycombe here in England, overcast. I can't go through all of them because there's so many, but just to say, look in the chat and you'll see the breadth of people who are here, and hopefully you'll be able to connect with one another in some way through our discussion today. So you can see here, these are the number of people who registered for our session today. And I'm told that we have some people beyond the 3 in New Zealand who are very, very keen to learn more about what our guest speakers have to say today. Sean said he's from Central Ontario in Central Canada, but many of his roots are derived from Ireland too. Hi, Sean. Definitely you've got a good Irish name there as well. And we have a Game of Thrones lover in the audience, which is wonderful as well. But you didn't just come here for me to talk about me. You're here today because you're really interested in Will's new book on developing employability capital in university students. Practical guide. And what I love about this is that emphasis on a practical guide. By the end of this session, we hope you're going to learn more about origins and application of key concepts from Will's work, understand the principles and the ethics underpinning the model, and consider how best to use the model in a wide range of settings. And I can tell you, you're definitely in for a treat today. I'd like to just very briefly say a few words about William, because I know he's quite modest and maybe won't say too much about himself. But let me just very briefly remind you that William E. Donald is an associate professor of sustainable careers and human management at Southampton Business School at the University of Southampton here in the UK. He works all over the world. He's got his own consultancy business. And he started, I think, life as a sort of graduate recruiter for an investment bank in London. And then he moved into academia, but still has that practical bend to him. He's very creative, has been a creator of sustainable career ecosystem theory, weather as career metaphor, again, and co-creator of what we're going to learn more about today. And when I say co-creator, he's done a lot of the thinking and heavy lifting, as I'm sure his fellow co-authors would testify. Listed in the Shaw Trust Disability Power 100 list, influential, one of the most influential people in terms of someone who is disabled here in the UK, actually is doing fantastic work advocating on behalf of that community. And Dr. Candy Ho, again in Canada, international award-winning educator and scholar based in Canada. Candy, I'm going to bring you in at this point because I sort of feel as though you don't need a big introduction. Simply to say that I know you've featured on TV, on radio, you've done a lot of influential work educating people around the world on the importance of career development, and I thank you for that. And I know that you're a past chair of CEREC, a fabulous organisation that spreads the word on career development. So over to you, Candy, to introduce, if you like, our, let's call Will our keynote speaker. So I'll just stop sharing and hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. Hi, everybody. It is a pleasure to be here with you all today. I'm coming to you from British Columbia, Canada, where finally we have stopped raining and sun is shining. And I'll first start by acknowledging that I'm a first-generation immigrant and uninvited guest situated at the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. And I wanted to pay attention and gratitude to Indigenous communities for being guardian of this land where I play, work, engage with you all from all over the world. I'm also a fellow Game of Thrones lover, and I just finished House of the Dragon's latest season. I know, I'm a little late, but it's been a very busy couple of years. And I'm currently at Kwantlen Polytechnic University as a professor and also the Chancellor's Chair, where I'm studying the intersect between career development and sustainable development. With a particular focus, my project right now is integrating the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in the K-12 curriculum with help and support of some brilliant K-12 educators. And I'm really grateful to be part of this launch, celebrating something that's so amazing. This book, sorry, you can't see because my screen is blur, and of course, somebody that I deeply admire, Dr. William Donald. So now, if you had told me that back in December 2022, that a last minute invitation, and Will, I did check this, it was sent December 24th, 2022, so the day before Christmas, no less, that single email would turn into a meaningful professional relationship and ongoing collaboration, I would probably have not believed you. Everybody's closed off during the holidays, so why are we still working? But that's exactly what had happened. I was asked to step in as a contributor for book chapter. Somebody else had dropped out, and soon, shortly after, I received an email from this fellow named William Donald. He's already looked up my LinkedIn profile by the time that he's emailed me. In that first message, he started to outline all the ways that I can contribute to this chapter thoughtfully and insightfully. And that was the moment where I realized something about Will Donnell. You don't say no to Will Donnell, not because he pressures you to say yes, but he absolutely respects a no, but because he's so darn sincere in his mission to do good work. He makes you want to be a part of the journey, wherever, whatever project he wants to bring you along. And honestly, if you look up the word compelling in the dictionary, Will's photo would be right beside it. Will, you're one of the most generous and thoughtful colleagues I know. You are the truest of hearts. You check in not just to collaborate, but to check in to see how people are really doing. Will is someone who actively navigates imposter syndrome, or sorry, I'm someone who now actively navigates imposter syndrome, and Will is the one of the few people that is provided for me a very safe sounding board when it comes to writing. And to this day, I continue to have insecurities, but I know that when I send something to Will, that it's going to be protected, that it's going to be safe, that whatever feedback he gives me, that it will be cherished and gifted. I think Will has an amazing ability to create psychologically safe spaces for open conversations. And I think that's remarkable. There's not a lot of people who can do that. And it reminds me from about a book called Fierce Conversations, that the conversation is the relationship. I feel that Will lives this, and every dialogue with him since December 2022, it builds trust, clarity, and community. Beyond being a wonderful human being, Will is a scholar who speaks powerfully from experience, as you can see from his social media posts, and of course, all of his writing pieces. As a disabled academic, he shines a light on issues that often go unnoticed, but he doesn't just raise awareness. He empowers all of us to think about it deeper. His advocacy is rooted on lived experiences and integrity. He tirelessly worked to lift the underserved and assures that their voices are not only heard, but centered. Since that first project, December 2022, I've been lucky enough to work with Will on 3 more writing collaborations, including the foreword for this amazing book. And in writing that piece, I had the opportunity to reflect on the incredible impact that he's made on our career development field and continue to make. So on to this wonderful book here. It is such a gift, Will. Thank you so much. And in it, you've masterfully bring together 2 of the most important contemporary frameworks in our field. First one being the career ecosystem theory, and the second one being sustainable career development theory. I'm not going to say too much about it because you're going to hear from Will, but the career ecosystem theory reminds us that people don't navigate their careers alone. We're all in this together. We're all surrounded by networks, communities, institutions, and it's those relationships that we have with people that shape, support, and sometimes redirect our journeys in good ways, like agreeing to write a chapter at the last minute. Sustainable career theory, on the other hand, emphasizes the dimensions of person, context, and time. It asks us to think about career success, not just as a progression or prestige or climbing a ladder with you will, but in terms of your health, happiness, and longevity. And certainly something that we really need, something that I teach in my class every single day, not about the marks, not climbing the ladder, but looking at things more holistically. So when these theories come together in Will's sustainable career ecosystem framework, which quite frankly is brilliant, because the model that he introduces, the employability capital growth model, it gives educators like myself, career professionals, and students alike the language and the tools to make sense of it all. So 9 forms of employability capital: the influence of external factors, the realities of shifting personal priorities over time, which is something that I talk about in media a lot, especially during the last 5 years. It's holistic, it's accessible, and quite timely. One of the things that I appreciate most is how immediately practical this work is. And after reading the book, I find myself shifting how I speak with students. I no longer ask about skills and goals, or only just skills and goals. I go beyond that. And I ask them, who's in their ecosystem? How do their cultural and health capital influence their decisions? And what personal outcomes matter most to them right now? Because it's about taking that next step forward and then figuring out the rest of the steps along the way. And I have found that this shifts alone deepens the conversations. It empowers my students to recognize resources that they didn't realize they had. And in professional settings, I've also used the model, the framework as a reflective tool with my clients and my colleagues. And it sparked some really rich dialogue about equity, access, and belonging, because employability isn't just about the single individual. It's about the structures that enable or hinder their success. And that brings me to something that I think Will would want all of us to reflect on as I conclude. So as career development educators and professionals, we often focus on helping students and our clients, and that's really important. But to truly support them, we also need to look at the systems that they're operating in, that they're part of, that they can be advocate, that we can be advocates for them toward, and really ask this question: are we building ecosystems that are equitable, supportive, and sustainable? So when you think about who is in your ecosystem, or the people that you serve, what's in their ecosystem? What are the supports? Where are the gaps? Are our services designed for students juggling 3 part-time jobs, which is a reality that I see in my classroom? Are our systems designed for the first generation students like myself, who are unsure of where to start and didn't necessarily have the resources available in their immediate family? What about for the neurodivergent or disabled students whose talents might not be recognized by traditional metrics? So when I think about it, this book really invites us to think differently and to also do differently, to be intentional, brave, and to be the ecosystem architects that our students deserve. So to Will, thank you. Thank you so much for your integrity, your curiosity, and your unwavering commitment to be lifting others up. You don't just model great scholarship, you model great humanity. And to everybody here, I hope this book stays close to you. It's in my bookshelf right there, along with my other Will Donald collection. Make sure that it's constantly in your practice, your curriculum, and your conversation. So let this be a reminder that employability isn't just about employment. It's about empowerment, it's about belonging and sustainability. And it's my pleasure now to pass it over to Will.
Well, good afternoon, everyone from the UK, and good morning, good evening to around the world. It's so lovely to have so many people who've come along today, and I'm truly humbled by Associate Professor Deirdre Hughes and Dr. Candy Ho. They're 2 people whose work I admire, and it's so lovely as well because Candy and her family visited last summer, so we know each other's family, and there's general, mutual acknowledgement of the work and contributions. So I very much value their support. Deirdre very kindly gave a lovely introduction, and Candy said some very humbling words, which I'm still trying to recover from slightly. So I really appreciate that. The only thing I can add is that I'm autistic, ADHD, and dyslexic, and I'm also housebound due to disability. I'm based in Oakley, which is about 40 minutes away from London in the central south of the UK, of England. So I'm going to present for about 20 minutes today, and then we're going to have a Q&A session. Let's start with an overview of the book. So it's 4 sections, 11 chapters, and 136 pages. It's actually classed as a short form book because it comes in at around 30,000 words, of course, including the brilliant foreword by Candy, which again, I'm so grateful for. You never quite know what you're going to get when you ask someone to write a foreword for a book. And you certainly can't turn around afterwards and say, oh, actually, I don't want that. But I knew from the moment I asked Candy she'd write something brilliant and heartfelt and insightful, and that's exactly what we got. So in the presentation part of this session, I'm going to focus on parts 2 and 3 of the book. But I'd just like to say a quick thank you to Professor Beatrice van der Heijden and Professor Yehuda Barak, who allowed me to use content from our work together that was published in the Journal of Vocational Behaviour in 2024. And that's in parts 1 and 4, chapters 2 and 10. So in case you don't know, Professor Beatrice van der Heijden and Professor Ons de Vos, they're the founders of Sustainable Career Theory, and Yehuda Barak is the founder of Career Ecosystem Theory. And what's been lovely is their engagement and support. Sometimes when someone comes along and merges 2 theories, you might get this idea of, oh, well, that was my theory first. And it's not like that at all. We've all worked together, we've brought each other along, and I'm so grateful for the support that they've given me. And of course, as Isaac Newton said, if I've seen further than any other person, it's only by standing on the shoulders of giants, and that certainly applies to them. Also, thank you to Professor Rob Straby, who's based in Canada. He's done some brilliant work with AI and using prompts to help with career development. And so I'm grateful that they could be included in chapter 10. And then, of course, alongside Professor Yehuda Barak, there's Associate Professor Melanie Ashley. And both of these scholars, they're actually my PhD supervision team in 2014. And prior to that, Mel was actually she taught me on my master's back in 2009. And it's so lovely that we've stayed connected. We continue to publish together, and I continue to learn a lot from them and owe a lot to both of them for their patience and their willingness to support young scholars, to support early career researchers. And it's something I've tried to pass on, and that's why I'm so passionate about supporting early career researchers myself. I'd also like to thank, there were 26 career development professionals and academics from 16 countries across 6 continents who contributed 19 insights to chapters 7 and 8 of the book. And again, there were people that gave feedback on draft chapters. I'm particularly indebted to Dr. Michael Healy in Australia for the insights that he provided through all stages, actually, from the initial proposal stage right the way through to just before I sent the book to the publisher for production. There's, of course, many, many other people that I would like to thank, but for the sake of brevity and time, I'd just like to share that this book is dedicated to my mother, Helen. She has terminal cancer, and so I'm so grateful that she's been able to see this book published, and this book's for you. Right, so the Employability Capital Growth Model, or ECGM. It was developed by myself, Professor Yehuda Barak, and Associate Professor Melanie Ashley. So the dream team, as I sometimes refer to. And it's based on a systematic literature review. And we looked at works published between 2016 and 2022. And we looked at areas of business, education, management, applied psychology, and psychology education. And we identified a set of 94 manuscripts. And on those, we conducted a qualitative content analysis. What's that mean? Well, it's quite painful, actually. It involved reviewing, reading, interpreting the text to identify patterns and themes of every single one of those 94 manuscripts and reading them multiple times, coming back to them, to make sure that we have a really rich understanding of the lie of the land. And as you can imagine, the process was highly labour intensive. It took nearly 250 hours to complete that stage of the project. And you'll see here there are 9 forms of employability capital, each represented by one of the petals. The center of the flower shows how these different forms of capital are interconnected. At the bottom left, you'll see the consideration of external factors, and these are things beyond an individual's direct control. And at the bottom right, you'll see the consideration of personal outcomes. So let's unpack each of these aspects now in turn. Social capital captures the benefits and opportunities gained from relationships and networks. Cultural capital, that's the familiarity with unwritten rules, traditions, and processes. Psychological capital, this is building a strong and resilient mindset to overcome challenges, but also being wary here of the notion of toxic resilience or toxic positivity. And I'm delighted to say that we've literally just published it, just got published yesterday, a paper on this that I've co-authored with Dr. Michael Healy. And we use the analogy here of being in a gym and doing weight training, and the idea that for our muscles to get stronger, they first get weakened and they break. And it's the reforming of that that gives that the strength of the muscles. And similar with resilience, we go through this process where we experience some kind of trauma or some kind of psychological or physical challenge. And then we need time, we need support, we need space to be able to recover from that, to come back and to move forward stronger. And this is the issue. It's not, resilience isn't just about keep going, keep going, keep going. I've tried that, I burnt out, and it contributed to why I'm housebound today. It's actually about resilience is knowing when you need help, when you need support, when to stop, and how you can then use that to keep going forward. So that's a really important point to make here. And the other one is, before we mention personal identity capital, this is not a deficit-based model. I can't stress this enough. We're not saying that any aspect is better than any other aspect. What we're saying is that each of us as humans, as individuals, bring unique aspects, unique experiences, cultural heritage, understanding to the table. And in each of us, we have unique abilities that we can contribute if we're given the opportunity to do so. So personal identity capital, this is personalities and characteristics. As you might have guessed, health capital, this is the state of our mental and our physical health. Scholastic capital, this is our educational qualifications and professional accreditations. And market value capital, this is where you might be more familiar with things like your skills. They're technical and personal skills, as I refer to them. Some people still use the older terminology of hard and soft skills, but we're moving away from that now, which I think is a good thing, because it underplays the value and importance and significance that both of these groups of skills play individually and collectively. And career identity capital, this is about managing our career and developing meaning from our career reflections. What does a career look like to us? What do we want? What's important to us? How can we go about potentially creating conditions where we can access such opportunities? And economic capital captures our financial resources, or indeed the lack of. So you'll see on the slide here, I've got some examples of what these different forms of capital might encompass. And rather than go through each of the boxes, I'm just going to look at two for now. You'll get a copy of the slides after the session. They're also in the book as well. And if we look at social capital, we see parents and family, friends, mentors, memberships and affiliations, and our network of contacts, as well as social media presence. And then psychological capital, here we have what are called the hero elements of hope, self-efficacy, resilience, and optimism. And yes, Luthans, and Luthans, the brilliant trio team that came up with that. There's a bit of poetic license there with self-efficacy. using the E, but the H for hope, E from self-efficacy, the R from resilience, and the O from optimism. They're the hero elements. And we also have other aspects, such as need for achievement, our attitude to risk and change, and emotional intelligence. And these are things that Professor Deirdre brought in his 2005 model that looked at supporting MBA students. Now, the key here is that you might look at this slide and say, you know what, Will, I think this particular aspect here should be under a different capital. Absolutely fine. No problem at all. Move it to where you want. You might say, I think there's something missing here. I think this capital should have this, this, and this. Absolutely fine. Add it. The key here is that it helps you and your students to consider the different dimensions of employability and to use the model in a way that works for you. Now, there are certain countries around the world where discussing personal identity capital could actually put students at risk. And it's really, really important from an ethical perspective and from a human being perspective that we are culturally aware and that we think about these things if we're using them in group settings, and if we're discussing them in one-to-one, we acknowledge the confidentiality of those discussions to protect such individuals. Now, one of the limitations of models of employability, it's been an overemphasis on the individual. The idea that if someone takes ownership of their career, they can achieve anything they want. Now, clearly, taking ownership of your career increases the likelihood of securing employment. But there are also various other factors at play, and we call these external or contextual factors. And again, the slide here offers some illustrative examples of the kinds of things that we mean. And Candy spoke about this a moment ago, of this distinction between employability and employment. And this is really key and something that I know that Professors Ruth Bridgestock and Professor Denise Jackson, both based in Australia, have been keen to highlight, going back as far as 2006. So here's an example. Let's look at labour market supply and demand. You've got 100 employable students, but there's only one job available. So only one of your students can be employed at that specific point in time. It's physically impossible that the other 99 are employed because there isn't another 99 jobs. The other 99 are still employable, they're just not employed. And this example makes clear that difference, despite these two terms often being used interchangeably, they're not the same thing, they're very distinct terms. And that leads us on nicely to the time dimension, since labour market supply and demand will fluctuate over time. So an individual acquires various forms of employability capital over time, leading to what Professor Hopful calls gain cycles. The resources gained help us to gain additional resources. And we store these in the abstract notion of what he refers to as a resource caravan. And whether we can operationalize, whether we can use these resources, comes down to whether we have resource passageways. I use a somewhat flawed analogy of if I have a caravan and have it parked at the front of my house, if there's no road to get the caravan out, it's stuck on the driveway, I can't use it. Of course, the flawed part of that is how did it get there in the first place, but we'll gloss over that for now. So early career counselling, early access to career counselling, it gives individuals more time to develop various forms of employability capital and be able to showcase possession of these to prospective employers. And consideration of these external factors can help students make informed career decisions based on the outcomes that they want to achieve. And again, as Candy rightly says, those desirable outcomes are likely to change over time. So the final part of the model captures how the interplay of the 9 forms of capital, context, and time dimensions can lead to various personal outcomes. And again, there's some illustrative examples on the slide. They're not an exhaustive list, and you might want to break them down further rather than combine them. But it's important to note that not all of these personal outcomes will be desirable or indeed achievable to all individuals all of the time. And the priority of these outcomes changes over time, particularly as we move through different life and perhaps career stages. For example, I did some research that looked at people that graduated in 2008 during the global financial crisis. That was my cohort. And people that graduated in 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic. In both cases, big global chance events, huge impacts on employment opportunities. And I interviewed them and said, what's important to you? What gives meaning to you in your career now? And what we found was that recent graduates from 2020 entering the labour market, they often prioritised career progression and success. Whereas after a decade or so, there was a bit of a shift more towards well-being and career satisfaction. But of course, these are broad generalisations, and the key is to enable the student, to support the student, to work out what is important to them. You may also notice that well-being and career satisfaction is framed as a personal outcome, but it also plays a critical role in encouraging people to develop various forms of capital, such as health capital and psychological capital. And this dynamic creates a feedback loop that again plays out over time. And it highlights the importance of fostering well-being to support long-term career satisfaction. So career guidance can help individuals identify what outcomes are most important, which outcomes might become more or less important over time, and what steps the individual can take to increase the chances of achieving their desired outcomes. Now, I'm actually doing a 3-part webinar series at the moment with Seric and Casey in Canada. And one of the brilliant questions that came up was, why are we referring to these as capitals? Why are we not referring to them as resources? And I didn't actually give a great answer last week. I'm going to return to that this week in the final session. But it actually comes down to me that our capitals are these examples. So for instance, let's assume we've got an egg. An egg is a capital. Now it becomes a resource or an ingredient when we need it, when we're using it to achieve a particular objective. So for instance, if we want to make an omelette, we're going to need some eggs. But an egg might not be helpful if you actually need broccoli. So the point being here, without being too abstract, is that capitals are examples of these different aspects, these different dimensions of what can be at play across employability dimensions. But it's how we then use those, acquire them and deploy them. And that is where we get the resources as our outcomes and how that feeds back into acquiring more forms of capital. So connecting the components we've got so far, the employability capital growth model, it's a tool to help individuals accumulate specific forms of employability capital. Consider the context and time dimensions of a sustainable career and increase their chances of achieving specific personal outcomes. And the great thing about the model is it can be used with all post-secondary students, regardless of age, the subject they're studying, or the extent to which they've understood, they have any prior understanding of this particular topic. So just bear with me for one moment. Right, let's have a look at how the model's being used in practice, because for me, everything I do research-wise has to have some kind of pragmatic benefit. It has to be useful in the real world in some meaningful way. So in 2024, I tasked 27 career development professionals and academics with piloting the model across 16 countries and 6 continents. And this led to 19 case studies, 250 words each, which are captured in the book across chapters 7 and 8. And it's the feedback from these case studies that led to the development of a 10-step guide for using the model. And we'll have a look at that in a moment. But before we do, let's look at the 3 different formats that you can use the model as a tool with your students or clients. All of the photos on the slides, these were taken during the piloting phase and shared with permission by the practitioners and academics who took them, but also with the individuals who feature in them as well. And the first 2 formats involve group sessions. The smaller groups or workshops usually cover 3 to 20 people, and the larger groups and lectures cover any group more than 20 people, and we've seen it used in lectures up to 200 students. The neat thing about the group sessions, students can share their experiences with each other and learn from each other. We also see situations where a student says, I don't have any contacts in this particular industry. I really want to work in there. And someone in their class says, hold on a minute. My aunt, my mother, my uncle, they're in that industry. I'll put you in contact with them. And so it's brilliant for leveraging these different opportunities that we have, but also for promoting social mobility. And generally, it's in smaller groups that we see the best discussions, the sharing of ideas, where students feel able to talk about their experiences more openly. But the larger groups are still effective because they fit into lecture time in partnership with lectures. And again, something that Candy mentioned, if you're doing 3 part-time jobs, how have you got time outside your lecture to go and get career support and guidance? You probably don't. And so embedding this into the curriculum also means that we access people who need that support. And the third format is one-to-one career sessions. And these are really valuable for tailoring such discussions to the specific needs of the individual. But the student misses out on the opportunities from the group sessions. And so ideally, they'd have a group session first and then a follow-up one-to-one session. But again, practical, pragmatic, realistic. We know that resources are tight for career development professionals. There's a university I spoke with that had 4 practitioners supporting nearly 20,000 students. So it might not be realistic to go that route. Again, a shout out here to Emma Lennox, who I'm delighted to say is on this session with us today, from Queen's University Belfast in Northern Ireland. And they ran a Kate Careers and Employability Capital session. And to Harfam, who through the Better Chance project in Vietnam, ran sessions online and then in person, and very, very creative ways here. Now, there's a 10-step guide to using this, which I can run through very briefly, but I'm also keen that I want to allow some time for questions and answers. So what you've got here is the 10 steps that you can do, and what we can think about this. So again, we're hoping the first time the students use the model, they're doing that under guidance, and future iterations they can do on their own. And they're thinking about what are the forms of capital, which are important to them, how can they showcase that they have these capitals through stories and narratives. We're asking them to identify areas of strengths and explain them, to identify areas of opportunities for improvement. Now, we don't need to acquire all the aspects of every capital. If we're making an omelette and we don't want broccoli in it, we don't need broccoli. So it's focusing on not just what we don't have, it's not a deficit-based model, but what we need and how we can go about acquiring that. You'll see again, we talk about external factors beyond agency, the personal outcomes, and we get them to reflect as well on this. And there's a worksheet, which I'll show briefly on the next slide. And then they're creating their action plan. And we come back to this every 3 months or so. And again, they fill this in, and in 3 months' time, they come back and they say, where am I now? What have I achieved off of my action plan? Have my plans and objectives that I want changed? And coming up with a new worksheet, and you can keep these over time across your career span and look back, as well as helping to look forward. So just to say, if you want to purchase the book, it's £20 for the ebook on Routledge's website, £52.99 for the hardback, but there's a 20% off voucher through till the 30th of April. I also have some copies, so reach out to me, because I have a few at a slightly cheaper price than that as well. That's the presentation part done. So that leaves about a quarter of an hour now for Q&A, and then Deirdre is going to wrap up, and that'll be that. So thank you so much for coming along, and really looking forward to the questions. I'm going to stop the screen share at this point.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I feel as though, I want to encourage everybody to give you a round of applause before we've even finished, really. But that was just really great. And I'm going to move, as the facilitator, straight into the questions. I think Stacey had her hand up, and I know Denise has raised her hand, and I know that we've got a couple of questions. So let me ask the first question, and then Stacey, if you're still there, please do switch on your mic, maybe your camera as well, and you can ask the question, and then we'll move on to our next one. Keep using the chat as well, folks. Sometimes it's hard to see people who've got their hands raised whenever you're sort of juggling a few things here. So, well, I think this is a great question that's come in from our colleague in Iceland, Jonina. Career identity capital. She's asking, how does that relate to career management skills? I just wondered what your take on that is. And Candy, again, feel free if there's anything you want to add. But yeah, well, career management skills is very much a European sort of theme, if you like, not necessarily grounded deep in theory, but certainly within sort of policy handbooks, etc. So yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And although we didn't have time to go into it, the sustainable career ecosystem theory actually places career development professionals as focal center actors in determining the sustainability of the career ecosystem. So career development professionals are massively, massively important to providing career support and advice. We know from Professor Tristram Hooley's work in the UK, the return on investment of career development support is significant, and it's massively underfunded. The sector's underfunded, colleagues are underpaid for the work that they're doing. And as you rightly say as well there, Deirdre, we have different terminologies in different countries. This notion of employability is still quite alien in North America. In the USA, for example, I talk with professors there, and they're still talking about skills, they're still talking about professional identity, and it feels a bit more corporate and a bit business school orientated rather than more accessible. But the career management skills, that for me is where you have this interconnected between the individual and the career development professional, where you support the individual. And again, the wording, the framing, I'm not precious. It's not a prescriptive, you must use this wording, you must use this format. It's to initiate discussion, and you might think of things you want to add, you might think of things you want to remove. So I don't know if that
Yeah, that's
answers that.
perfect. And I think that's really why, Will, your work and my work we both really believe in this notion that things need to be practical to support people on the ground. And you do need to have that flexibility, ownership of creating frameworks that have meaning to you and your students, your clients is important. Now we've got some great questions here. Next one. What are the key considerations to persuade or encourage university leaders or career centre management to adopt this model based on your experience and or your findings so far? So Will, I'll invite you to respond to that. And then Candy, it'd be good to hear your views on that because you also work in a university setting.
Yeah, another great question. And let's be honest, because there's no point sugarcoating it. It is really hard to get buy-in, particularly in universities. The number of career services I work with that have brilliant ideas of doing brilliant work, but they're not represented on the board of the university. They don't have an advocate who is in that position of power and influence to get that change. And unfortunately, as horrible as it is, one of the ways to go about that is to show the return on investment. Universities are obsessed with league table rankings. I hate them, but universities are obsessed with them. So go and show them how they give you some investment and you can improve the employability of the students. Not employment metrics, they're different to employability, but the satisfaction surveys that the students do when they graduate, the feeling of return on investment of their degree as fees keep rising. And using this economic case to say, as a university, we can attract more students, which is massive at the moment as so many universities face funding challenges. But we need your support, we need your buy-in, and we need a seat at the table. And yes, they may well turn around and say no, but all you can do is try. And Candy, yeah, please, you've got brilliant insights on this one.
Yeah, I'm somewhere along the same lines as you as well, in looking at career services and as a recruitment tool for students that are coming in. And when you say ROI, I can't help but to think about evidence-based practice. So if we use the model that you've so brilliantly documented, talking about what happened to students before they came in to seek help from us and what happens to them after, so that immediate getting their support and then also following them, right? Like the university graduated survey is a great thing, but I think it's a single point in time. So like if we're able to have immediate quicker surveys talk about that and then have students say, did you go and seek advice from your local university career center before you graduate, and then look at the comparisons? I think that's really powerful. And then when I look at your screen of like the 9 capitals, I can't help but think there's huge opportunities to collaborate as a career center, let's say with, financial capital or economic capital, financial aid and support, mental health and wellness. So there's departments within the university or colleges that career services leaders can connect and collaborate with that will make a difference for all our students.
Just unmute. I love what you've just said there. And I think it's very interesting. Recently, my team have been working here in the UK in a county called Durham, up in the northeast, which Durham University is a highly regarded university. But one of the pieces of work that we did, and this is very groundbreaking, which is from Dr. Chris Percy, who's one of my senior associates, and I've put the link in here, is why don't we look at return on investment from what employers will get back if they engage with the careers, activities, and the community? And he's actually developed a model based on ROI that could be of value and interest. So I know that we've got colleagues here from all around the world, but take a look at it because we haven't seen anything published on this turning the coin and saying, well, what about employers? If you will engage more in our work, you'll value it more, but actually not only will you make a difference in terms of philanthropic social good, but actually you'll get a bit of a return on investment in the long term if you get really good hires. So just to sort of make that, make everyone aware, again, it's another free resource. We've got to hear, with a change of government in the UK, is there a political will to look at underpinning guidance models afresh? Andrew Wallum is saying, well, what you've come up with makes perfect sense. Maybe if I just say, I think the government at the moment needs to be reminded of these guidance models that exist. We haven't just made up our practice. There is a very, very strong evidence base, and Will's book adds to that. What do you think, Will? Do you think the UK government is looking at guidance models, or do we need to do more on that ourselves?
It's a very fascinating one. I've got a colleague who's based out in Abu Dhabi, and I talk to them quite a lot about their experiences in the UAE. And they can deliver these mega projects, and they can deliver these really impactful programs because they don't have a change of government every 5 years or perhaps quicker. Of course, there's downsides to that as well in that setup. But it is really difficult when a different government comes in, changes things. I've just published a piece in The Conversation about the changes to PIP, and it's great to see £1 million being earmarked for support for getting disabled people into work. But the issue is the previous governments that have used similar approaches and thrown money at it as well, they've only got 1 in 5 people on that programme who are disabled into work, because it's the systemic barriers that are the problem. It's the bias in the recruitment process. It's the employers not creating conditions where neurodivergent individuals can thrive. And so these things are all really passionate to me, but I'm conscious of time. So I'd say it's a great question, and you might have some insights you'd like to share too.
And even I will just take this, and then I just want to finish off really by showing a couple of slides and thanking everyone for joining us. But Eben is asking Will, he says he's interested here if you think your model and practical guide can be used by those of us who work as career professionals with PhD students and postdoctorates as our target group, or does it require a lot of adaptation?
No, absolutely. We have used it across undergraduate, postgraduate, including PhD. What we found is that at master's and PhD level, you can bring people from different courses, different parts of the institution together, and they'll share ideas really well. They want to know a bit more about what's career ecosystem theory, what are capitals, and a bit more depth of knowledge. That's chapters 2 and 10 of the book. But then at undergraduate, we see there's less interest in that first and second year in the theory side. They want the practical guidance. So you can bring together first and second years quite happily in a group. You can bring together third year and masters. You can bring together masters and PhD. Any courses, it works really well, but perhaps not bringing together different groups from across those boundaries because they need different things at different points in their journey. It's a short answer.
Yeah, thank you. And again, I'm just reminding people there about that promo code that you kindly shared, Will. Just as I wrap up, for those of you, Will mentioned AI. He also mentioned his mother. I'm going to come on to your mother as well, Will. But just when Will mentioned that in the book, there is a reference to AI, and this is something that over the last sort of 4 years or so, I've been on a journey developing CC, the chatbot, careers chatbot, which is actually embedded in universities, schools and colleges and community groups here in the UK. If anyone wants to have a look at any time, there's a free demo. Just click on the link, you'll get the slides. For those of you who have got that AI bend, and I couldn't sort of resist mentioning it, just here's some sort of publications, again, free, that you can access, particularly thinking about what the future might look like. Again, I won't labor it. But we have got another organisation I run is called Career Chat UK. We're pioneering innovation. And I think I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you to our next session where we have got two brilliant speakers, very much at the cutting edge of looking at AI and asking the question why AI experts are accidentally misleading educators. Most AI advice focuses on saving time, but is that enough? So Jack and Laurie will be joining us on the 14th of May. And when you get these slides, we'll send you the link to that and hope that you'll be able to join us. And then just last thing, really, just to say, all of today has been about our brilliant speakers. Will mentioned his mother and her terminal illness. Well, I want to say, as someone who lost her mother due to terminal illness a long time ago, that each and every one of us, our heart actually goes out to your mother, to you, and to your wider family. And I hope she takes comfort that you're such a loving son, that you cared enough to mention her in your professional work. So on behalf of everybody, I just want to thank you for that. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Will. Thank you, everyone. People from Nigeria, from Uganda, from New Zealand, from the UK, so many places. Iceland, I'll miss somebody if I don't stop now. But I just want to say thank you so much. Who would have thought 5 years ago we would be sitting here and listening to such brilliant, talented people who are clearly passionate about this subject area. So thank you, Will. Thank you, Candy. Thank you, everyone else. And just to say, I definitely didn't think, as a woman who grew up in Coleraine in Northern Ireland in the 60s and 70s, that here I would be in 2025. And someone in the audience is from Coleraine. So thank you so much for coming. And this has made my day. Lots of things in the chat you'll see there, Will and Candy. Thank you, so insightful. Thank you so much, amazing. These are all accolades for you and your great work. And what a wonderful team you and Candy are. And I hope that you'll come back at some point and share some more on the other topics that I know that you are so knowledgeable and experienced in. Thanks, everyone. For those of you who celebrate Easter, I hope the Easter Bunny comes with lots of chocolate, eggs, and chocolate cake, and all those other things, so important. For those of you who don't, I do hope that you get some rest over the next few weeks in your very busy schedule. And as Will said, we always have to look after ourselves as well as others. And certainly don't want you to burn out, because I know I've had experience of that, and Will's had experience of that, and maybe others as well. So take good care of yourselves, and until we meet again, thank you so much. See you all soon. Bye-bye.